Welcome to Ecclesia Principles, a biblical strategy for believers to engage in God's design for government with Ray Eppard.
Hello, glad you could join us again today. We've been looking at how the Founding Fathers endeavored through particularly the Bill of Rights and the Statement and Declaration of Independence about unalienable rights, how it was their intent to protect everyone's unalienable rights. And we've spent some time looking at the First Amendment to the Constitution. We started yesterday looking at the Second Amendment. And with this, the right to bear arms. And it starts off with referencing the need for a militia. It's not talking about squirrel hunting. It's talking about the right to defend yourself ultimately from an intrusive government. In their day and time, that was the British government, King George, so forth and so on. But I want to look at a little bit of history today. Now, our text for this, and we've been saying it every day, because this is the basic premise. Let Romans 13:1, let every soul be subject to the governing authorities. You see, it is a right to defend yourself. You have a right to life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. And if you would, if someone comes to take your life, at that point, you have the God-given right to defend yourself. Now, with this, let's look, and especially even with the government, you have the right to defend yourself. Now, before God. Now, let's look in our own history. See, what a lot of people do not realize, and unfortunately, a lot of our education today, especially in regards to history and civics, is more propaganda than education. So many of our young people are not actually being educated, they are being indoctrinated. So many people say, well, we need to keep all this out of education. Yeah, you should have said that before they started bringing it in. It's already there. Indoctrination is already there in much of our public school systems. But with this, go back to the Civil War. The period after the Civil War is largely known as the Reconstruction era, where they were looking to rebuild the South from the devastation of the war. The slaves were freed, they were given the right to vote. And they voted almost 100% Republican, because it was Republicans that fought to free them. Now, with this, a lot of the laws that came into play in the South to restrict voting, restrict legitimate voting. There's nothing wrong with restricting illegal voting. It's wrong to restrict legitimate voting. But the Jim Crow laws and all these things that were done to restrict legitimate voting came into play, and through legislation, the blacks were robbed of their right to bear arms. It was actually passed that a black person could not have a gun. Now, once that got passed, that's when the lynchings started in the South. That's when the KKK rose to prominence in the South. And if you would, go look it up in history. You will find that, I can't remember the exact number, but whatever the estimate is, because they don't have an exact number, whatever the estimate is of the number of people, number of blacks that were lynched, there was close to half that many Republicans that were lynched, because they were trying to get the rights of the blacks to vote and to participate in society. But you see, that evil time in our country, when those lynchings, which were horrible, and the brutality that came through all of that, it followed taking away the right to bear arms. You see, when you've got one group that has weapons and another group that doesn't have any, we might not have F-15s, but the bottom line is that if the people on the other side know that there are weapons over there, it deters some of their activity. But in the South, when the right to bear arms was taken away from the blacks, they suffered horrors that were comparable to the time period of slavery. The right to bear arms is a necessity. God bless you.
You've been listening to Ecclesia Principles with Ray Eppard. Follow us on YouTube and Facebook on our Ray Eppard pages. This program was brought to you by Victory Worship Center and World Outreach. Services Sunday 9 o'clock and 11 o'clock, 200 Hammond Lane, Stanton, Virginia.